Hey everybody, welcome to Press Pause, the video game discussion show. I'm your host, Carlos Rodella. Also with me today and always, Dan Shu, or Shu.
I'm still not sure where I'm supposed to
Oh, you can
wave.
just look at me. You can look at him. You can look at Scott, and co-host, and also today Cesar Quintero. I said it right. Okay. Cesar is awesome, and he works at Area 5. And what else are you doing? Area 5 and
Area 5 and Area 5.
A lot of Area 5. Check it out, area5.tv. Today we're going to talk about Half Minute Hero, Super Mega Neo Climax, which there's some sexual reference in there somewhere.
I have to give him credit for getting climax in the name without it being too risque.
Yeah, well, it's right there. Yeah. Topic of the day is evolution of video games. We're going to talk a little bit about old school memories and how games are evolving. But first, top of the show. Today, before we get started, we wanted to mention UFC trainer. Hello, here's the game. Personal trainer. We talked about last show, we were going to do this contest, right?
Yeah, we were just chatting outside, and you were talking about, like, you wanted to lose weight, and I wanted to lose weight, and we're like, let's do it in a show, like, on a video game.
Right, and we have a show. Here
and then it worked out because this just came out.
This just came out, UFC trainer.
I think the same day we talked about it, it actually
came
out,
weird. It knew.
Yeah.
It was like a release when Dan and Carlos won it.
And we're not getting paid for all of this.
No.
Very promotional.
I know, right? So anyways, we just emailed them. We're like, hey, we want to do this contest. And they're like, here's 2 copies of the game. Go for it. So we're going to see how much weight we can lose. I have a lot to lose. And you don't have as much, so we're doing percentage-wise, right?
Yeah, let's put some money on it.
Oh, okay, cool.
So whatever percent you lose, whatever percent I lose, whoever has more wins the difference in
we can make
tens
it
of dollars.
Well, no, that part's too complicated, right? Let's just say someone wins. You take care of the math.
I'll take care of the math and accounting.
You figure out that thing.
I'll tell you how much you owe me by the end.
Okay, we're going to do it, and we'll do it for, how long are we doing it for?
I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks.
A month. Let's do a month.
A month, okay.
And then we'll come back on the show and tell you guys how it went and who won. Also, before the show, we did arm wrestling and just saying I won. I had to throw that out there.
He did the over the top.
I did the over the top. We'll show you. I'll put it in the show later. I feel like I'm slipping. My chair's wobbly. Dead heat. It's an even. Wait. Over the top. Over the top.
Over the top. Oh. Turn your hat backwards, quick.
I don't have a hat. All right, just call me winner. Call me the winner.
Come on, man. Come on.
Oh! Over the top.
Damn it.
That was so idyllic. Okay, and also want to mention that last show I mentioned Daggerdale being awesome. Well, like, okay.
You thought it was awesome.
I like the fact that you could, like, smash barrels and get loot. It's a bad game. I admitted that. But now I admit that it's even worse because the save function is broken.
Oh, really?
Like, really broken. Like, I got really far, and it says you can save it, and whenever you save it, it looks like it's saving. And then I went back in, and it was the beginning of that quest.
Oh.
The beginning.
That sucks.
So, Daggerdale is dead to me. Long live Torchlight. Brilliant game. And you should get that if you don't have it, Torchlight. All right, let's talk about our first thing, which is the review of 30 Half Minute Hero for XBLA. Dan, you want to start?
Yeah, so I really like this game on the PSP. It was just sort of like, it was really under the radar. You know, it's not from a big publisher. It's fun, you know. And if you haven't played it, the idea is you always have 30 seconds to save the world, right? Someone has a spell, and then but then you start to learn, like, all right, what's the fastest way to do things? You have to grind really quick, like all battles. There are a lot of random battles, but they only take like maybe 1 or 2 seconds each, and it's all automated.
It's a lot of planning.
Yeah, well, not even a lot. I think it's almost kind of arcadey RPG, you know. So you just run through real quick, grind, and then you go pause the time in a town and talk to this goddess who can reset. You can pay her more and more money to reset the time. So you have to be able to grind, get enough gold to pay her, and plan accordingly, so you could go beat the guy who's casting the spell. But literally, there's like as soon as it starts, 30 seconds, it starts counting down, and it gets really loud, and it's like it just feels like you're in some like a James Bond movie, and the bomb's about to explode.
Yeah.
You know, and you're just like,
I love it as a countdown. It's like 3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah.
And you're gonna die sometimes.
Yeah,
you're gonna mess up, and then it's just like it's no big deal. Just start it.
Yeah, and when you die, you actually stay in that level with the time still where it was. So you don't literally like the game isn't over until the whole world ends. So when you die, you just kind of go back to the beginning. You're like, okay, crook, I can maybe salvage this mission.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it was really interesting, but there is a little bit of planning because later on in the game, there's like, oh, that forest is burning over there. You have to take care of that and then go get the guy. And you're like, well, which way you can go? And there's like 2 ways to go. You could get a horse if you want. You don't have to. So it's really interesting. And then you got to replay it a bunch of different ways until you figure out that's probably the best way.
Yeah, the variety of the quests is actually impressive considering they still managed to fit it all in like, even at max you're playing minute 30 seconds per quest, it's like you reset twice or something. And even then they fit in like fetch quests and like monster like cave grinding and like all this other stuff. And it's a really great express quest game, Like I didn't play it on PSP, but I really wanted to play it back in the day, so now I played it on Xbox Live. And at first I was scared because I saw the graphics change, and I was like, oh no, they like, updated it. And then I saw there was optional, and I was like, oh, good, because it kept like the
You can go to the old school 8-bit version.
Are you playing in retro graphics?
Yeah, I'm playing in retro graphics.
I think it's so hard to see on a big screen.
It is.
It's like so like pixelated.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I actually go, I don't like the new graphics.
Oh, really?
But I play it that way because
I do too.
It's
I do
easier
too.
to see what's going on.
No, I feel you. But it's like I said, it's like the perfect express gameplay. I almost wanted it on like iPhone or iPad too, because I could feel it'd be great to carry out on your phone and just like play it really quick, put it back, carry it on your phone, play back.
Yeah, so in this world of busy lives, it's a really cool thing to play. It's like, okay, I can just really get a couple of levels done, or I can save the planet a couple times.
Yeah.
And then they do that fun spoiler alert, the credits at the end every time you beat. Well, every time you save the world, which is interesting.
But you zip through it really fast.
Yeah, of course. No, I watch it every time. I'm just like, I want to know if they changed it all. What if it did?
Some guy worked on this level.
Yeah, he worked on that forest part.
What's cool is like when you first start playing it, you're like, well, seems like a really shallow game. How far can you go? Mm-hmm. You don't realize like every level they keep adding new things. Like now you can buy special weapons or magical equipment. Like you said, the horse and boats and things like that. You got to figure out. They keep expanding it.
Yeah.
And adding gameplay to it without making it too difficult. And it is an RPG, so you do like all your leveling up is within that 30-second one mission, so you don't carry it over world to world.
Yep.
But you keep your gear. Like if you get a better sword or better shield, you can keep that.
That's what I was gonna say. The only thing that felt lacking for me is that kind of sense of accomplishment. Like my character really is leveling up. And I really didn't feel like he fully was, because they really do have to start over, kind of.
But you get ending credits at the end of every
You
quest.
get ending credits, yeah. So it makes up for it. And also the slow motion kill at the end is awesome. It's like such a simple thing, but you're like, kill him.
Yeah.
So we're gonna say get it, forget it, or meh. Meh being like, you take it or leave it. I'm gonna say get it. I think it's obvious. It's cheap, it's real quick, and you can save the world.
I definitely say get it. I will say the Xbox 360 controls are really bad. Especially
Wait, the controls or the control pad?
Control pad or the analog stick. Like if you're don't you get like wandering through the wilderness?
Stuck a little bit.
You get stuck going one direction.
And it's like you only have a few seconds, and then like every second
you're like, you just wasted me 2 seconds. Piece of wood.
But that means
every
a lot.
second actually counts. So
or it might be an extra random encounter too.
Yeah. So like I'm constantly getting stuck in the trees or something. Like it's not smooth movement. So that was driving me nuts.
But still get it.
But it's a really fun game. Yeah. So get it.
800 points, get it for sure. It's like no-brainer.
Get it across the board. You heard it here first on Press Pause. You probably, not at first, you probably heard someone else say it. It's probably good. I don't know why I just like that end. It's the news channel.
Well, no, I want to see if anyone's ever heard 3 get it's.
Okay, yeah, maybe they haven't.
No.
You heard that here first, so deal with that. We'll do a quick commercial, and when we come back, we're talking about the evolution of video games.
First, there was Atari. Then, there was Nintendo.
Now, the next generation video games, TurboGrafx 16 and TurboGrafx CD for live video games and 2,000 times more memory. Turbo Express Portable, Turbo Chip compatibility, basic system $99.99. TurboGrafx 16, the next generation now.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. The chat room mentioned that Torchlight is $2 right now on Steam. So you're a fool if you don't get it, because it's a great game. Let's talk about the evolution of video games. This idea came up when I was reading an article actually in GamePro about how, right now our game cycle with the consoles, it seems like, the graphics kind of reached pretty much a peak. We're making a lot of sequels, it seems like, are coming out. And it's just interesting how the difference between a new game and new graphics now compared to back in the day, for us, me and Dan, maybe a little bit, that day is further. But yeah, and then those jumps and those kind of really cool elation feeling, we're like, oh my goodness, going from Nintendo or Super Nintendo, going from really old PC to even Nintendo for me. So let's talk about some memories maybe of like, how when you thought it felt like a really big jump, and then what you think of the the jumps or the evolution now today. I'm gonna start with Dan because I keep staring at you right now.
All right. Well, I mean, one big jump for me, I remember back in the day, was the NES, but not necessarily graphically. Like I just thought the control pad,
Just gameplay wise.
yeah,
right?
just really changed things. But then like. Where I wasn't as impressed with the PlayStation 1 era as a lot of people were back then. They like 3D graphics, and even then I thought like, well, Tekken looks really blocky, Toshinden looks really blocky. Like I really didn't quite get it. But where I really started to like think like, wow, this graphics are incredible. It's like Dreamcast was the first system for me, where you had like this high resolution. You know, you had S video output, and then when I saw even dumb games like remember that Godzilla game that came out in Japan? First,
Oh yeah.
It was like terrible game. No, we didn't understand how to play, but it just looked really
It
cool.
looked really, yeah.
Then-
There's a lot of games like that on Dreamcast.
And then Soul Calibur 1 was like, because you could compare it to the arcade version, and we came from an era where it was like went back in the Saturn days. Virtual Fighter, pretty comparable to arcade. You're getting arcade.
Well,
quality
Virtual
graphics.
Fighter was blocky anyhow in the
Yeah.
arcade, so
Yeah.
it was
But
easy
even,
to do
even
that.
like when you moved up Virtual Fighter 2, for example, so you're getting arcade quality graphics on your home consoles. Then the Dreamcast was the one that showed this is more powerful than the
Yeah.
arcade, because the Dreamcast Soul Calibur looked 10 times better than the arcade one. It was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, and it was the edges were rounded. You were going from like PS1, where you said, yeah, even during PS1 when the graphics were supposedly better, I felt the same way. I was like, that's kind of blocky. Like, and they're trying a lot because they're doing 3D,
Right.
3 dimensions. But for me, really, there's two of them. One is again early PC days, like Ultima 1 and 2, where like literally there's no animation, you just kind of walk around the screen. And then when I got to Nintendo, for me, the combination of the controller and the graphics kind of being, they weren't super, but they were lots of different colors. The sprites were nice, roundly formed or whatever. And the game just felt like, I don't know, it just felt different. It felt more involved. And then from Nintendo to Super Nintendo, or TurboGrafx and Sega Genesis, I mean, I remember feeling so excited about, like, I go to the store and look at the back of the box.
Oh, dude, totally.
All right, in the back of the
yeah.
box, you're like, that's going to be in the game? Like, that doesn't happen now. Like, you get Uncharted 2, and you're like, yeah, it's Uncharted 1, but it's different. You know?
Right.
I mean, there's obviously a different story, and there's minute things, right?
Well, there was
Am I
also-
crazy in that thought?
No,
I mean,
I
no,
thought
it's
like
true,
Super Nintendo. Remember, they introduced things like Mode 7.
Oh, yeah.
And then that, like when I saw Pilot Wings, I was like, this is really next generation. You
Yeah.
can't do this on the NES.
Yeah.
That was really awesome to me.
Well, think about how much harder it's getting for people to market these changes now. Like before, it was like you could advertise Mode 7 and then 16 bits, 8-bit
Blast processing.
Yeah.
They had all these buzzwords, and things were getting it went from 8-bit to 16-bit. They went from 2D to 3D. They went from FMV to real time,
Yep.
and now it's like real time to more real time.
Yeah.
Real timeier, and
You should coin that phrase. Real time here.
and the leaps are getting harder to describe. So it's getting harder for even though they are getting graphically improved, and the move from SD to HD was huge. But besides that, what do people say now? When they're touting the next Gears of War, like more enemies.
Right.
Yes.
I think part of the problem is when Xbox came on, right? It's the first Xbox 360, I should say, first next generation platform. I think they really screwed up in the beginning, because if you imagine if Gears of War 1 was a launch game and something like BioShock was a launch game, it would have blown everyone away.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of their launch games were just kind of like high-res ports of PlayStation 2 and Xbox One games. So when you see games like Gun, the Tony Hawk games and things like that, it was just like, well, it's a little sharper, I guess, but you don't see that jump like when we saw from PS2 to PS1 to Dreamcast.
Right, or even with the Wii. I mean, like the GameCube to Wii, it's not like that much different.
Right.
And you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll get this one with a crazy controller.
Yeah.
What was a memory from you, like back in the day, where you're like, oh, from this to this?
I mean, I can start. I had an Intellivision as my first system, so
Oh, yeah.
controller-wise,
Intellivision too.
dude, the controller was awful. It was like
That
a
round
remote control
thing?
with
Yeah.
a round thing, and you're
None
just
of the
like,
people, by the way, watching the show right now have any idea what television is, because we're, I guess, ancient. But yeah, there was a terrible controller.
Yeah, it was awful, and I went from those games, I went from those games to Super Mario Brothers, and I just remember the jump felt so perfect in that game, like anything else I'd ever seen. Or played. I was just like, oh my god, this. When I press the A button, he does this perfect arc, and I can time it perfectly every time, and I have air control, and it was like a whole other level of game playing, And
Yeah,
then,
that control really added to it. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously the graphics are going up, but you're like, man, I feel really good playing this.
yeah, more than
Instead of
anything
like,
at that era, like it was really the controls that actually made such a significant leap. And the same thing can be said about like 8-bit to 16-bit, because fighting games, I wasn't huge into it until Street Fighter, but you know, before that, nobody could play fighting games really. Like,
right.
You'd play like, I don't know, what was the Street Fighter 20?
Oh, that NES one?
20
it's not even a Street
something.
Fighter game?
Yeah, it's not even a Street
Yeah, you're like
Fighter
a
game.
cyborg.
Yeah, and there's like, you know, you're jumping around trying to hit people. And
Remember
stuff.
all of us wanted that to be Street Fighter?
Yeah,
we were like, this is Street Fighter,
I
right?
couldn't afford a Super Nintendo, so
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, so I was like, oh man, this game has Street Fighter in the title, I'm gonna buy it. I did the same thing, I looked at the back of the box and looked, this looks pretty dope, all right. I put it in and I was like, man, this isn't Street Fighter, I just spent $70.
We should have known though, because the back of the box, I remember, he was like in a cybernetic suit.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I think I'll still go with it though. I
His
don't know.
name was Ken.
His name was Ken. So interesting you said about controllers. I think that's really another big thing. So like even when you go from Super Nintendo controller to the dual analog, you're like, whoa, really? That's incredible control. And then now we still have just dual analog. Like, you know what I mean? Like obviously there's the Wii, you can talk about that. But I don't know if I put that as a separate thing.
Yeah, same thing with like Kinect and PlayStation Move and all that, right?
Right.
It's like neat technology, but
Yeah, that's not this way, I don't think. It's just kind of like that way.
But it doesn't let you do more necessarily. It just simplifies things.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's the problem.
So that's interesting, yeah. So we'll see what happens. I mean, obviously we were talking about before the show, like, what's it going to be like, you know, like PlayStation 9 commercial, remember, where they put it in your eyes, wetware video game.
They're gonna have contact lenses that scan everything.
Yeah, and you're like, this is different.
Yeah.
I am impressed. Cool. Well, anyways, just thought I'd bring that up. It's interesting.
Yeah, can I shotgun blast out a bunch of other cool memories?
You can. Oh, I have a couple other. If you want to keep going, we could do this all day.
I know. Like, okay, so we talked about Pilot Wings, right?
Yep.
So Street Fighter 2 on Super Nintendo
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like incredible. But a lot of my old school memories are Super Nintendo.
Okay.
And, Star Fox, despite it being blocky, that was
Yeah,
cool.
that Mode 7.
Donkey Kong Country, another one.
Yeah, that did. I guess the graphics were like crisp.
Yeah,
They were a little.
It's like a different kind of imagery. But on the PC side, I wanted to mention Doom and Ultima Underworld.
Ultima Underworld, which is what the basically precursor. Wasn't that before? Was that before Doom? I think it was.
I don't remember.
I remember I read a retrospective that it was before Doom.
Yeah, I think so. I kind of get it mixed up a little bit. I'm pretty sure it is. But there is just like this very smooth, full 3D movement in first
Yeah, it was
person.
those caves with the rocks and stuff. No one knows again in the show. They're watching the show. Ultima Underworld was basically the original first-person shooter.
Well,
But you were like
it was
an
like
attack.
RPG, right?
It was an RPG with a sword. A first-person Skyrim.
But yeah, you just
was,
want to
Elder
explore.
Scrolls.
You just like you couldn't wait to like go into this dungeon. It was kind of boring.
Yeah.
But it was just amazing at the time to be able to just go through like very natural caves and rooms and all this stuff, and have monsters be in there. It's all fully 3D, and it ran smoothly. If you had
Right, and if you remember coming from PCs, if you're old enough, the old school PCs, like games like Wizardry and stuff, all those, and Bard's Tale, they all had that kind of, I'm going this way, first person, but it was so bad.
But like step by step.
Image by image,
yeah.
And they're like, oh, there's that blocky thing, I think it's a spider? Also, my memory, I remembered is Keith Courage and Alpha Zones. So I was a big TurboGrafx 16 guy. I still am to my dying day. I think it's the greatest, one of the greatest systems ever. PC Engine Japan. But Keith Courage was the game that came with the TurboGrafx 16. And so I come from, you know, Nintendo or whatever, and it was just enough step up, and like the sound was a little better. For some reason, I felt like the sound was better.
Yeah.
And maybe it was, like channels, I don't know. But like literally, it starts off the game where you're kind of running along. I'll show footage. You're running along, and it looks like almost a Mario. And you're like, this game is kind of bad. And you turn into a mech later. And then you go into the underworld, and you kick ass. And the sound is really cool, and you're like, choo, 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 and the graphics just look shiny. You know, and I just noticed the difference. I mean, it's such a simple thing, like taking that pixel and like putting a little shader on it, you know, and it realizing,
made a huge difference.
yeah, that shading was like, whoa, that's a big moment for me. I was like, I'm in the future.
I have a lot of memories from the 16-bit era too, only because like I said, I had to wait a long time because I was saving my own money to buy a SNES and a Genesis. And when I got my Genesis, which was my first 16-bit console, I was so excited to get like the Sonic games, you know, but my parents were like, you get one game with it and it's got to be under this amount. And I was like, what? Like 40 bucks? What can I get for that? So they picked out, they're like, you want Sonic the Hedgehog, right? This is like Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh,
and they hand me Awesome Possum.
Can't elbow Brad. Now it's really bad. Oh, boy. Amazing. I'm so hyper.
And it is
that's
the
not
worst
Sonic.
game The worst game, and I was like, at first I was still impressed because it was like really fast, you know. And
Yeah,
I was
you
just
blast
like,
processing.
Whoa, blast processing, yeah. But right,
Did he really say that? Because that'd be awesome. Mom has got blast processing.
but it was so lame because you know he had like all these catchphrases and you couldn't turn them off. So every time he like jumped, he'd make a catchphrase. It was just
Sonic was
Cowabunga.
just too expensive.
so it was like $60, you know,
Yeah.
and like Awesome Possum was like a discount, like $39.99 title. And I was like,
That's what
this is
people don't
you
realize.
get.
Back then, like people were like, the games are so expensive now. You just said it.
They were
$60.
60, $70.
$70 for what game you mentioned earlier.
I paid $80 for Final Fantasy 3.
What the bitch? So people calm down with the $60 games. And these were not like graphically even close. but
Nintendo should
it was
really
a-
teach people a lesson, go back to cartridges and start charging $80 for
Nice.
games.
Or like those big cartridges with Neo Geo.
Yeah, those big fatties.
$135.
Yep.
Get our game.
Speaking of Final Fantasy 3, which was 6, eventually became 6. Remember Final Fantasy 3 on the Super
Yeah,
Nintendo?
yeah.
And then the graphics then were really awesome.
Yeah,
like
the
this-
colors.
The colors, yeah,
Yeah.
like the sun poking through the trees and all that stuff. And then the sound was really great. They had
the
that
sound was
famous
amazing.
opera scene
Yeah.
that everyone talked about, and it was just everyone was just blown away by how this game looked and sounded.
You know what's weird is that I recently replayed that somewhere in the millionth remake of it or whatever, and I put it on headphones, and I was like, I never played with headphones when I was a kid. We didn't do that, by the way. Back in the day, it was the television, the really crappy television with no stereo sound. There was no speakers.
Your wood grain floor model.
My wood-
TV.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, is this also radio? But yeah, and so then I listened to that music in Final Fantasy, and I was like, this is amazing in headphones. So
That's when I first remember there being video game soundtracks. Actually, I don't know how old I was, but I came over to my cousin's house and he had the Final Fantasy VI soundtrack sitting on his desk, and I was
Awesome.
like, "Oh no way! I would love to listen to that." It was so cool.
and I'd be remiss not to mention, like we mentioned a couple of shows ago, TurboGrafx 16 CD-ROM too, because like the CD-ROM era was, you know, oh my goodness, these are moving cartoons, moving videos, even though they were bad with Night Trap and stuff like that. But it was like, whoa, that's something else, you know. So that's
Yeah.
interesting. All right, well, good. We're gonna hope that the consoles go bigger, better.
Well,
Somehow.
I was going to say, so the thing is, a lot of the things we mentioned, right, were like better frame rates, better looking this and that, but it's kind of like if the optimist in me kind of likes the current day too, which is, now the challenge isn't to make something look better, but to maybe give it some identity or soul,
Right.
artistic interpretation. So now you see games like Limbo is a perfect example.
And Journey.
Journey,
Yeah.
BioShock, I think it kind of fall into this category where it's like, all right, there's only so much we could do. Like Gears of War to me is just about making it look better, like more detailed,
Yeah.
better physics and all of that stuff. Like great looking game, but to me it's cool to see a game like Limbo or what's that game I keep forgetting about? This the side scroller that you really like from Ubisoft, hack and slash.
Outland.
Outland.
Yeah,
was
it's beautiful.
awesome,
Yeah.
I
Or
100% agree with you.
Twisted Metal,
Yeah.
Insanely Twisted Planet, whatever.
Twins-
it is.
yeah, exactly.
Like it's just a graphical style now. They're just like it doesn't need to be powerful.
Right.
It doesn't need to be on a powerful system. It's just cool. It's a different artistic
Yeah.
interpretation.
So that's where we are. I mean, that's where, and that totally goes to indie games right now. Like indie games are having an amazing time right now with that. So no, I love that part of it. It still would be interesting to have that feeling we had when we were a kid, though. You know, because
Right.
that elation was something we'll never have back. Never have back.
Magical.
That's going to do it for the show. Thank you, Cesar, for being on the show. People
Absolutely.
can check you out at area5.tv. What are you doing? What are you working on right now? Anything particular?
Multitude of projects which I cannot announce yet.
Oh, all secret stuff. Never mind. And Dan Shu's on Twitter, or you're on Twitter at,
I'm on Twitter at Cesar Quintero.
okay. And
One
you're Bitmob Shu.
App and Mop Shoot.
I'm Onawa, Onawa. And if you miss a show, you are a terrible person. You should come back next week, Tuesday, 12 p.m. Pacific, at justin.tv/presspause. Also, check out our episodes that are fully edited at presspause.mevio.com. And that's when we add all the doohickeys and make it look fancy. Did you see the nice boyfriend thing I added?
Yeah.
Nice.
I showed it to my girlfriend.
Oh, cool, cool. Also, we'll keep you up to date on this because we don't know what's going to happen. We're starting it today, and I'm actually excited. And that's going to do it. So, bye. Oh, wait. You want to do it?
No, you do it.
Okay. Game over. one. Oh my goodness.
One dad, 162. Woo! Yeah, this guy. I didn't do that. Good job, buddy. Good.